Yeah, good evening, class. So I have to pre-record this particular class for you guys, since many of you are not available for today class. If anybody join me later, no problem. So the topic we are looking at today is our last topic on view, and that's what we know as well as the Vue.js, sorry, API in our view. So that's the last topic we want to look at now, API, especially what API is. What is what API? Now, when we're talking about the API, in a very simple way, we can look at API as well as what is referred to as a web, or let me say API simply mean what? Application Programming Interface. Application Programming Interface. So when we say application programming interface is a what? Is a program that can be accessed over the internet by using the HTTP web protocol. This API is just like a software application, like a desktop application, web application, mobile application. But this type of application can only be accessed over the internet. And one of the purpose of this particular web API is that this API enable the communication between the different software system and application. And this allow them to exchange data and functionality. Imagine this application that a company A need the software from company B. Instead of company B to make the software available in a standalone application, a company B can design that particular software as an API. After design the software as an API, they can upload the particular API online. And once they upload it online, they can now give the URL to company A to go and consume that particular API. There are some API that they use to exchange the data. It might be that the data that available in the company B API is the what the company API needed, or maybe the functionality like calculator. So any of this type of information can be exchanged by what? By the API. So this API allow different type of the company to communicate well together. And this API, they are normally used to build the web application like mobile app and other services that need to interact with remote world resources. Imagine you are building an application that going to need a current weather. You are building a website and you want the current weather to display on your website. Especially, you need the weather for the next 5 days to be able to available on your website. There are some companies that already have the information about this particular weather. There's some companies that already have the data about this particular weather. Then you can build your website to access those particular company data, because those company are going to put such a data in an API application. Or if there's any company they already build the weather information as an API, you can use such an API, because not going to be possible to use ordinary website information in your own website. Just as you already know before that most of the website we have, information available in the website A cannot be easily integrated into the website B. The only way you can get information from another website is for that website to make it available in an API. And that's why this API is an application that must run over the internet and that allow the different type of the company to interact with another company application. Now, most of the API data dey always be in form of JSON format or XML format. At any time you want to get the data from any API, that data appear in a JSON format, or some data appear in XML format. And then there's going to be a new what you call a serialize and deserialize before you can be able to use those data, especially if it's in an XML format. Now, API have a different type of the architecture. One of the most important part of architecture style of the API is what you call HTTP method. This method is one of the important, it determine the type of the operation you can perform in any API application. Some of those operations is what you call get, post, put and delete. Get is to retrieve record from an API, while the post is to add the record to the API. The put is to delete any of the data in an API, while the delete is to delete or remove any record from API. So if you are accessing any data from any API, expect those data to be returned in a format like what? Like JSON format or XML word format. As at today, there are more than hundreds of thousands of API available worldwide now for different purpose. This one already have a lot of front-end developer to integrate some back-end functionality inside their web application. That is just it. So we'll be looking at some of the other API now. There are some API that can give the information of different type of the university available all over the world. Some API will give you information about different type of the world of the food available all over the world. Some API will give you information about different type of the music, while some API give information about the world movies. Imagine you want to build the movies website and you want to return all the action movies worldwide. Such a database cannot be is not going to be easy to be built. But there are some company dey already build the movie site and they have all the different movie data in an API application. So what you need to do to make sure you get those particular company address that have that API. And to access any API now, you will need what you call endpoint. For any company that want you to access their API, they are going to make what you call endpoint available for you. Some of those particular available and some of the example of that endpoint is what you have here now. Like for example now, they say there is a web service API that expose data to outside the world. The REST API provide access to the web services through the public URL. For any API you want to access, there must be a URL address to access that API. Remember I said API is what? Is a web application too. So for any API you need, then it must be uploaded online. And every API also have their URL, just like what your website have a URL. If you look at one of the sample API URL we have here now, this is just a sample one. This one is coming from what? GitHub user. So if I copy this particular URL to see what the API already return and now return to what? To the browser here now. Let me paste it and see data this is going to return to us. This one should return, can you see now? This one return the data of all the world or GTHub user, but these are the dummy user. And this data appear in the JSON format. JSON simply mean what? JavaScript notation object. It's a standard format that a data must be what? Must be displayed if you want data to be shared or to be used by another application. And here are some of the sample of the of this JSON data we have here about the GTHub user. So if you are going to access any API, the data they are going to return to you is this format. And then it is now the you as a front-end developer to be able to consume this data and display it in a proper format in your own website. And that is exactly what we want to achieve on this our API topic. Now, let's look at some other API area here now. We have talked about already API method there now. That these are the API method that allow us to know which operation you can perform on any web API. For any information I'm going to perform on API, these three methods determine it: get, post, and delete. And when you talk about a resource is any data available on your web API. Just like the one I just display here now. My resource here is a user because this API is returning the user data. Another resource I can have can be video. If API is returning the video, or API returning the movies, or API returning the customer data. So those can be different type of of the resources that can be available for the API. So apart from that again, these are the some of the method in detail. Like I said, get retrieve the existing record from the resource, while post can be used to add the new resource, put can be used to edit an existing result, while delete remove an existing result. You get now. Now there's something we also call the endpoint, which is very important. For anybody to access any API, the endpoint is very important. The endpoint can be so how you can be able to use every get method to access different record of the API or data available on the API. When you specify get a slash like this with any resource, that means you want to retrieve all the record from the resource. If you say resource name with ID, you are getting a single resource. If you say resource and you are using post method, that means you're adding a new one. If you now say put and you're specifying resource with an ID, that means you are editing a resource. While delete with an ID and resource, meaning you are deleting what a resource now. So resource can be any information like I said earlier before. Now, there are other type of URL endpoint for different type of API. We already see the one that return all the GTHub user here now. These are some of the API URL that also were available. We have this one that is being used for the dummy user here. Let's see data is going to return because every API they only return data by using what in their JSON format. You can see this is another API now that return the another user. Apart from that again, there are another API that return all the university available. This is another API that return another user. You can see we have different type of API, but we are going to use one of this particular one to implement our own API. This is another API user here from this side. And also, let's see the list of all university in the world, maybe even though in Nigeria here now. This is another URL that give us the different type of API, but this one should return all university available in Nigeria. Can you see now? This is it again. And there's another one again, so that because anytime you want to consume any API, the most important thing is to make sure that you get their URL endpoint here. But there's some API that you are going to pay for and some are free online. If it is free, you can easily access their URL. But if you are going to pay for it, you have to pay before you can get this particular URL and possible username and password to be able to access it. So this is another one. Oh, sorry. So here is another endpoint for this. So as you can see here now, because I already sent this particular request for the first time, sending it again is giving me there are many requests I've sent again. So this is one of the error, and these are what we call the error code. So you can see this API here, this one and this one and this one again. So all these are the different type of the URL, and every API return data in JSON format. But imagine as a front-end developer, somebody now saying they want you to consume their own API. You are the one you are going to decide how do you want the data to be retrieved so that I can display in a proper format, because ordinary user or client will not understand this particular record. That is it. But in order to understand how this API appear very well, there's a software we call Postman, which you might need to download and install to be able to preview your API in the proper order. So the Postman can be downloaded, it is free. So now let me show you how to use a Postman to be able to access your own API again, or to test it, because it's one of the software that is mainly used to test an API. So once you load your Postman, you can go to okay. So it take you to the new workspace where you can be able to access API now. So assuming now that I want to see some API display in a proper order like this, I can copy the API URL which I want to display. Let me pick the one from Nigerian University now. So I copy this one here now, and now return to my Postman. So on your Postman workspace, you get now, you will see this icon here that say new request. From the new request, you can see the get here, simply because I want to use the get endpoint. If I want to use post, that's to add the record. Put is to edit, while delete is to remove. So on the get here now, you will now paste the URL for your API. That means I'm using HTTP get for this particular API now. So then I now click on send. So this one will go and retrieve all API record. Now you can see now, here we have the API record that is being displayed here now. So this one show different type of the school from Nigeria now. This is Adekunle Ajasin University. This is their website address. and this is a domain name for them. So you can see there are so many other universities here too. So for even though when I click here again and I pick another word URL here, maybe this one, I want to see the some of the dummy user here. I also return to my word postman and I also paste the URL. This one can display this record in a proper order. You can now see the information available here now, like what ID, first name, last name, and so on like that. So this one is where we can see different type of the word, the API data in a proper order. And you must, before you can use them, you have to understand the type of data API returning so that you can now design how you want to display this data. So the next thing for us to see how this API data can be consumed in view now for our application purpose. So to see how the API is going to consume in view, there's something we need to do first. Do you get it now? And that is to install that API. But before we get to that, let's look at what API. API is the application that only designed by by any backend developer. They can use different type of the language like C Sharp, Java, PHP, Python, Node.js, and C++ to create API. Is a word. So once the backend developer creates it, as a front-end developer, you can now request for that API to use it on your own work program, because that API can be used to communicate with database, and whatever data API retrieve from the database, once a front-end developer connect to that API, that data can be available on the front-end interface. Now, to use API now, the first thing we are going to do is to first install a package that can allow us to use the API, and that package is called Axios and Vue Axios. After that, we can now create a component we want to use to call the API, and after that, you can now mount the API on our application app, or if you want to use a particular button to call it. Once we have done that, we can now give a command to fetch the API. As long as the API is going to show many record, you can use V4 to display all the record from those API. So to start here now, I'm return to to our last application we created in Vue, our application that is using the Bootstrap. So I click on Files. I will now click on Open World folder. I will locate for the application now. Users, okay, user here, and then desktop. Okay, so here is our application we created the last time now, Danjuma Bootstrap version 2. I click on select folder here, so the application is already displayed. So I can close all this particular the interface I have here now. You get now? So once I do that, like I said, I have to install the API package. So I'll launch the terminal menu. Once I launch the terminal menu here, I can now install the package for this particular API. And to install the package for the API, I'll use the command npm install Axios and vue Axios. Right now I'm copying the command and I'm returning to my Visual Studio Code environment and paste. Can you see now? So once I do this, I can press enter key to start the installation. Installation doesn't take time. It's very light, just like when we install the Bootstrap app too. So moment the installation is complete, then we can now create a component we want to use for that API. Yeah, installation is complete here now. So I'm now returning back here again. So I'll click on file. Sorry, I will now come down here and create a new component. So the component is going to call maybe user AP user user API page dot view now. That is it. That means I want to use my API to consume one of this particular user record, whether the one from the GT hub here, or the one from dummy JSON here, or the one from JSON placeholder here now. You get now? That is it. So, but I would prefer to use this one now, which we already tested with our with our postman. So the URL here is the one that is most more important now. Okay, so once I've done that again, and I want data to appear in the tabular format, so I can start my template here. Okay, so template, and I close the template here now. Okay, so after that, the div section in the template, and I also call the div. So here now, I can now have the h2 that say using API. Okay, using API now. That is it. And I'm going to create one simple header, which is A3. I'm going to do fetch user data from API. That is it now. So now I can tell this particular component first. Do you get now? Because though I'm still going to need the script section. I'm going to need the script section. And I also might need the style section too. That is it now. So but let me test it now by saving this. I return to my app view here, and from my app view, okay, I can temporarily comment this here now. I can comment this here. Okay, so okay, let me do this. Okay, I can comment this now. Okay, and I change it to what? User. This is going to be what? User API page. User API page. Okay, so I register this user here. Okay, I register the user here. I only call the user to here now. So this other one here should be removed. Okay, so let me save this page here now. Once I save it again, I have to rebuild, which is what? npm run serve. Okay, so let's say the component we just created for the API to test on it. So we have not yet calling the API now. I just want to see whether the component design is working or not working. That is it. Okay, so let me test run this one here now, and see the page. Good. So the next thing now is, since this is the data you want to display, and I want the data to display in a tabular form in order to make it readable. So this data now, I would love to do to make sure I display the ID for user, the first name, last name, the gender, email and phone number. Even though we can also try and display their date of birth. Let's say I can pick 5 different information from the user and display it first. That is it. So that means I'll need to create a table of 5 columns for this. Okay, so to do that again, I'm returning to my component here now and start creating a table here, table tag now. Okay, and then I have to define some attribute for the table temporarily now. Border equal 1, and also the width for the table, it should be 100% too. Okay, for now. And there will be t body. Okay, table will have the header, so I say t head tag, and that contain the rule for the header now, and then that will have a th. Okay, so id is the first one, header, and like I said, 5 again, first name, last name, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So maybe this one date of birth, I want that one. And here now, email too. And okay, this should be okay, phone number, phone number, and email address. And here now we have first name. Okay, let me add the last name to it now. So that will be okay. Since we have the first name, we have the last name now. Okay, so these are the information to be get from them. Then I will now create the body, T body section now, and that's where we are going to have the row that we want to display here now. The row here is where each of the data for heading will be displayed. So this TD here is where the data coming from API we are going to display it to, and that one will be C too. The data we already see in our API, each of those data will be displayed on this section here one by one. So now let me save this and see how the table look like now quickly. Very good, you can see our table now. So all this section here is where the data we have inside this API we are going to display it to, and that is exactly what every front-end developer must know how to do it. So to do that again, I will return back to to this our guideline document here in this word here now. So for that one again, so now I'm going to okay. So I'm going to, since I already installed the company, in the script section, I'm going to import this particular information one after the other. Import view, import issues, and the same time, I will also import the import view and the issues and view issues too. First, we import issues, import view issues. So one by one. So the script section is where we move to, and under the script section here now, say import, okay, view, import view, I'll say from section like this, view now, and that should be semicolon. Import view from view, okay, that's a semicolon now. So, and that is one, and two now be what? Import issues from, in quotation again, issues. These are the second, these are the one of the company I install for this particular view again too. Okay, and last one, view issues. Now say import, okay, import view issues from, import view issues issues from, okay, from view hyphen issues. That is it. But I should have closed this column here. Good. So after I've import all these three information, the next thing now to register these two view objects. This view API object which I import. These are the two package from the view I install now, from the issues I install. The first one is issues and view issues. I create object issues, I create object view issues. I will now register them with the view one after the other together. So to do that again, that's going to be what? View dot use view issues supposed to return and the and issues auto complete. Why? It's supposed to give me auto complete now. Supposed to give me auto complete. Okay, so that's good. And the next one now, okay, we can now start our main JavaScript content. So export default. Okay, so the name section for the component name, we call it user API dot Okay, user API page. Okay, that's the package name and comma. And the next one now is in whatever API we are going to retrieve, we have to declare a variable where the API will going to be stored. Because all the data that is coming from this API, we must store inside the variable. So that variable is what I want to declare here now. So I say data here now and return for return variable that hold the data. So I will now call it a user DB colon null for now, because I don't have any value assigned to it. So once that is defined, the next one is I'm now going to use another section called mounted. Why I'm using this mounted is simply because anytime this particular page is load, I want the system to execute the API code directly. Assuming that I want user to click on a button for the API to execute, do you get it now? I'm going to use method section. So this method allows the API data to display as soon as this particular page is loaded. So to do that again, I will now complete the code for that API. I will complete it by saying view.attribute.get so that I can specify the URL for that API there now. I say view dot what view dot attributes dot get good the URL for that API in this quotation, and the URL for API I'm using is this now. I'll select it here now. Okay, copy it. Okay, and paste it right inside this instruction here now. That is it. You get it? So, and once that is being pasted here now, okay, I will now define the option that when the URL is being executed, the location where system is going to send it to is what I'm going to display here now. Okay, so then where's my closing bracket? Okay, so now follow with dot then okay, so open bracket and say response. Response is a variable that will hold the data coming, any data returned from this response will hold it. Are you getting it now? The response will hold it. Okay, so after there's a equal part. Okay, let me bring the response to the next line. Okay, equal part okay, so equal part the data that is being returned. Okay, the data that's being returned here. Equal part the data. Okay, good. So that's it now. Then I can now access the value. I can now access the variable here. So here now I'm going to be this dot user db equal to response dot data. That is it. So the data here is to pick the data returned from the API we have here, this URL. So pick the data from it. You get it now. So once I've done that, the last activity now is to make sure every information returned here should be displayed inside the table here. So you can use v4 to return it. So here now I can say v for equal to I can say user in user db. User db here is a location where the API data is being stored to, just like what you can see what I do here now. I store in response and say assign what is in this particular response the data to user db. So then I can start picking it up one by one from there now. Do you get now? And to pick it up now, I already prepared this word table by saying okay. So what I'm returning now to do now is in okay, let me confirm. Okay, so from this table here now, good. I will now say key equal user dot id. This id is one of the column that is available in this API data. You can see id 123, and after that again I can start picking the name one by one from here now. So to pick the name for here, my placeholder is going to be what? User dot for id. That to return the id for the first person. Oh, okay. The next one is going to be what? Placeholder now to be user dot what? Oh, how do they spell the name? Yes, very important again. Capital letter in the middle, first name, last name. Okay. The spelling in this order is very important too. So user dot what of first what name, and you see, okay. And let me copy this to replicate for the rest again. Two, three. So here now is going to be what? Last name, last name now. So after last name, what are the other column here? Okay, we have email, phone. Good. We have okay, column is what? Phone. So after phone, email. So after email, add this spell date of birth now. It's a birth date. Okay. So here now become what? The birth date. I think that date is capital D now. Yes, capital D. So birth date. That is it. So this one now, we can test it now, see what come up for us here now. Same as building it. Oh, there's an error. Be banking directive. Okay, so I can return back to here. I say what? V hyphen bind column key. Okay, so let me save it again. Good. And now check the wall, the page now. So we expect data to appear here. Sometimes data may not appear due to the wall, to if the network is very slow. So that may not be the reason why data may not appear. But data can still appear, the network is very fast. But if you wait for some few minutes, you still see data, there may be something wrong again on this.